We're also seeing a lot of interesting things like the RSIs, weekly RSIs in Ethereum and Bitcoin are right down at levels that have always seen reversals. We're seeing it with on-chain activity. We're seeing it with minor capitulation. We're also seeing it with volatility. The 30-day realized volatility of both ETH and Bitcoin is at levels that always precedes the large rallies and the big reversals. So I've pretty much got everything in place. Is it possible to get some other down leg? I doubt it, unless something can drive bond yields high. And I just don't see that outside of a temporary blip because one of the inflation numbers or one of the employment numbers is skewed somewhat. So I don't see that happening. So I think we are moving higher. I think ETH based in June, and I've said that for several months now, in fact, since June when I started adding to my positions. The bottom of the cycle is always it's a scam, it's a Ponzi, all the media hates it, everybody throws shit at each other online, everybody's looking for blame, looking for scapegoats. We are exactly in that point now. It is ugly out there. And that ugliness out there is a real measure of where we are in the cycle. So we're at the despair and anger phase. And then we have the acceptance phase, which is the boredom phase, which I think we've rolled into, where prices don't do anything for a while and everyone starts getting fed up and moves on elsewhere. You can see artificial intelligence is getting people's attention just when they should be looking at crypto as well. Don't forget, artificial intelligence is not really investable for most of us because it's all VC, while crypto is real-time VC that we can trade, which is part of the magic of it. So we're at the blow-up phase, the FTX scandal. Now, I've seen this. I've seen it with Mt. Gox. I've seen it with Bitfinex. I've seen it every single bloody cycle. And this time around, everyone's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Yeah, it's every time the end of the world. And guess what? It's not. It's never the end of the world. People say, well, nobody's ever going to come back into this market. Well, I've been around. I've been around the block a long time. I've been 30 odd years in financial markets. And I've seen this with hedge funds. Long-term capital management, the biggest blow up of a hedge fund in history, the Fed had to bail out the whole system. What everybody shouted at them, they're a Ponzi, they're a scam, they're over-leveraged. Hedge funds are uninvestable. Net outcome, the net assets of hedge funds went up 5x over the next 7 years. Why? Regulation. Regulation appears to have cleaned up the space, and then people feel much safer to come in because the institutions are waiting. And I've had conversations throughout Raoul's Adventures in Crypto, both with hedge funds like Olaf Carson Wee, with Jeff Dorman. I've also had it with people like Urian Timmer. I've had it with Sandy Call. And everybody tells us the institutions are still looking at this space. So my guess, regulation and an upswing in prices, upswing in global liquidity, and they start coming in a more meaningful way. There tend to be momentum chasers. Also, we saw similar after Madoff. Hedge funds are uninvestable, they're opaque, nobody knows what they're about, nobody's going to ever put money in them again. What happened? I think the hedge fund industry went up another 5x in assets under management. So that's what I'm expecting here. Regulation equals safety, equals green light, equals go. If that coincides with global liquidity, it creates fireworks. And the market has no short positions in. It has no real ability to short unless you want to use Binance. And nobody really wants to use Binance because everyone's a bit scared of who owns it, its opaqueness, even the audits. And so therefore, you've got very few shorts and you've got a massive amount of money coming into the market. And stuff like ETH is deflationary the more volume there is. So the more volume there is, the less ETH's around, the more kind of reflexive in price it is. So I think we're setting up for a super interesting cycle. So I am been buying any money I can find. I'm throwing into crypto, literally in nothing else right now. I'm super focused. And I have been buying some NFTs. I'll come on to that in a bit. So that's where I think we are in the trend. And that's the cyclical element. Where are we in the long-term adoption trend? Well, the adoption trend, if you see this chart of Bitcoin, that's the log trend of Bitcoin. We're 2 standard deviations oversold. We're the most oversold we've ever been versus trend. And we're at the point of global liquidity turning. And we've got, if you believe in it, the halving. It's all coming into place exactly at the same time. Again, really interesting. And here's the long-term log chart of ETH. Same story, right on that big support level. And these kind of things are really interesting. The last time we got the cyclical cycle down onto the logarithmic trend, or to the bottom end of the logarithmic trend, was 2018, December. November, December 2018, we saw that puke, the final puke lower, which I think we saw in Bitcoin in October from the FTX, and I think we saw in ETH in June. What happened was that's when volatility came to the low and the market started picking up. That period, as soon as the Fed pivoted, was a complete change in markets. 2018 had seen the kind of falls we've seen now, about 20, 30% falls. It was sharp, it was nasty, everyone was terrified. And then what happened was the Fed went, okay, sorry, yeah, we can see the economic data is falling apart, inflation's coming lower, so we're going to stop. And I think the S&P did about 15%. I think oil did about something similar. And then the NASDAQ did about 20. Exponential age stocks, the growth technology stocks, did about 24%. Bitcoin in 9 months did 300 or 400%, as did ETH. So these were staggering gains that came out of that environment. I've always referred to it like a beach ball being held underwater because the adoption trend is still there. What's fascinating about the adoption trend this time around, particularly in ETH, is the volumes have remained reasonably high. The number of active users has remained high. The total value transacted, which is the other part of the Metcalfe's law equation, has actually come down as the price of NFTs has come down. But the other measures look like it's robust. 2018, we saw a much larger fall in daily active users because it was earlier in the network adoption phase. But this time around, we get to build on top of what we built on from the last cycle. So that makes me very constructive overall.